It was supposed to be a normal afternoon at the bakery. Children laughing, ovens humming, warm sugar smells floating in the air. Then the door opened softly and hesitantly. A homeless woman stepped inside, holding the hand of a tiny girl whose shoes were worn thin, whose hair was tied with a fraying ribbon. The mother's eyes were tired, the kind of tired life carves into a person over years of surviving. They stood in front of the display filled with fresh cakes, bright frosting, strawberries, glistening, candles waiting for celebrations. The girl whispered, "Mom, can I pick one?" The mother swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she leaned toward the cashier and whispered words so soft. Only 3 people in the room heard them. "You maybe haven't expired. Cake, just something small. My daughter's birthday is today." The cashier frowned. Behind her, a few customers snickered under their breath, but someone else heard it too. Sitting in the corner booth, holding a tiny espresso cup in his tatted hands, was Salvatore Costa, the most feared Mafia boss in the city. He saw the way the little girl tried to hide her disappointment. He saw the mother pretending not to notice the stares, and he heard every word clearer than gunfire. The cashier sighed impatiently. "No, ma'am. We don't give trash to customers." The girl lowered her head. The mother blinked fast. Holding back tears, the Mafia boss slowly stood up. His chair scraped the floor. The entire bakery froze. He walked over, towering behind them, his shadow falling across the glass display. "Excuse me," he said, voice low and steady. The mother turned, terrified. She recognized him instantly, but instead of anger, there was something else in his eyes. He knelt down to the little girl, looked at her worn-out shoes and her trembling smile, and asked gently, "Tell me, sweetheart, what kind of cake do you want for your birthday?" What happened next would change all 3 of their lives forever. Stay with me until the end, because what the Mafia boss did next shattered everyone's expectations. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's get started. The little girl's name was Sophia. She was 7 years old today. Though she looked smaller than most children her age, hunger has a way of stealing childhood, making bright eyes dimmer, making laughter quieter. Her mother, Elena, had been homeless for 8 months after losing their apartment when the factory closed down. They had been surviving on shelter meals and whatever kindness strangers offered, which wasn't much. Sophia pointed to a vanilla cake decorated with pink roses and rainbow sprinkles. "That one," she whispered, then quickly added, "but the small piece is okay, Mom." Salvatore Costa had built his reputation on fear. Men twice his size trembled when they heard his name. He controlled half the city's underground operations, commanded loyalty through power, and settled disputes with methods that made grown men disappear without a trace. But as he looked down at this 7-year-old girl, asking for just a small piece of birthday cake, something cracked open inside his chest. The cashier, a teenage girl named Amy, shifted nervously. She recognized Salvatore from the newspapers. Everyone in the neighborhood knew his face, knew the stories. Her hands shook as she gripped the counter. "Sir, I'm sorry, but our manager doesn't allow us to give away food. Store policy." Salvatore's dark eyes moved from the little girl to the cashier, then to the mother, who was pulling gently on her daughter's hand, trying to leave before things got complicated. The other customers had gone completely silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to hold its breath. "How much for the whole cake?" Salvatore asked, his voice carrying the weight of authority that made people listen. Amy fumbled with the price tag. $40, sir." Elena stepped forward, panic in her voice. "Please. We don't need anything expensive. We were just hoping maybe something old, something you might throw away anyway. We don't want any trouble." Salvatore reached into his jacket. The movement made everyone in the bakery tense up. But he only pulled out a thick leather wallet. He placed $300 bills on the counter. "I want that cake. The whole thing. And I want you to put 7 candles on it. Can you do that?" Amy nodded frantically, her eyes wide. "Yes, sir. Absolutely." But Salvatore wasn't finished. He turned to Elena, and when he spoke, his voice was gentler than anyone in that room had ever heard from him. "When's the last time you'd had a real meal?" Elena's chin trembled. "Yesterday morning. The shelter served breakfast." The silence that followed was deafening. Even hardened criminals who worked for Salvatore would have been shocked at what happened next. This man who had ordered hits, who had broken bones and destroyed lives, who ruled through fear and violence, was looking at a homeless mother and her hungry daughter with something none of his enemies had ever seen in his eyes: compassion. "Amy," he said, still not taking his eyes off Elena and Sophia, "I want you to box up 2 of your best sandwiches, some of those pastries in the window." And whatever hot soup you have today. Put it all in a bag, sir. That'll be. Amy started to calculate. Just do it. He placed another 100 on the counter. Keep the change. Sophia looked up at her mother with confusion. She had learned early in life that good things didn't happen to people like them. Strangers weren't kind. Adults didn't care about little girls with dirty clothes and worn-out shoes. But this man, the scary man she had seen on television news reports, was asking about her birthday cake like it mattered to him. Elena was crying now, quiet tears that she tried to hide by looking down. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Salvatore was quiet for a long moment. In that silence, memories flooded back. Memories he had buried so deep he thought they were gone forever. His own 7th birthday when his family had nothing. His mother, proud and desperate, trying to make something special out of nothing. The way she had looked when neighbors turned them away, when stores refused to help, when the world decided that people like them didn't deserve kindness. Because, he said finally, everyone deserves to feel important on their birthday. Especially little girls who ask for small pieces, when they deserve the whole cake. Amy worked quickly, packing up the food while the cake was being prepared in the back. The other customers watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous man in the city knelt down again to talk to Sophia. You know what, sweetheart, I think 7 candles isn't enough for someone as special as you. How about we make it 8? 1 for good luck. Sophia smiled for the first time that day. A real smile that reached her eyes and made her look like the child she was supposed to be. But what Salvatore did next would shock everyone even more than his generosity. Because this story was about to take a turn that no one in that bakery could have predicted. The cake arrived 15 minutes later, decorated with 8 bright candles and Sophia's name written in delicate purple frosting. But as Amy carried it to the counter, Salvatore pulled out his phone, then made a call that would turn this simple act of kindness into something much bigger. Marco, he said into the phone, his voice carrying that familiar edge of command. I need you to bring the car around to Rossetti's bakery and call Maria. Tell her to prepare the guest room upstairs. We're going to have visitors. Elena's face went pale. She grabbed Sophia's hand tighter. What's happening? We just wanted some cake. We don't need anything else. The other customers began whispering frantically among themselves. They knew Salvatore's reputation. When he made phone calls, people disappeared. When he offered help, it usually came with strings attached that could strangle you later. But Sophia was mesmerized by the cake. 8 candles flickering like tiny stars. Her name spelled out in letters she could barely read but recognized as hers. For a moment she forgot about being hungry, forgot about sleeping in shelters, forgot about her mother's worried tears late at night. Can I blow them out now, Mom? She asked, her voice full of wonder. Salvatore looked at Elena, understanding the fear in her eyes. This woman had learned to survive by avoiding men like him, by keeping her head down, by never accepting help that might come with a price she couldn't afford to pay. You think I'm going to hurt you? He said quietly, so only she could hear. I understand why. But let me tell you something, Elena. I know your name because I've been watching you and your daughter for 3 weeks. Elena's blood turned to ice. She pulled Sophia closer, ready to run, ready to leave the cake and the food and everything behind if it meant keeping her daughter safe. Wait, Salvatore said, raising his hand. You sleep in the alley behind the church on Maple Street. You take Sophia to the park every morning so she can play on the swings before the other kids arrive. You spend your afternoons at the library because it's warm and safe. And Sophia can read books you can't afford to buy her. Elena was trembling now. Why have you been watching us? Because you remind me of someone I lost a long time ago. His voice cracked slightly, a sound so unexpected that Amy stopped counting money and stared. My sister. She was a single mother too. Struggled to feed her little girl, worked 3 jobs, never asked anyone for help. Too proud, too scared. The bakery had gone completely silent except for the soft flickering of the candles on Sophia's cake. What happened to her? Elena whispered. Salvatore's jaw tightened. She died in a car accident driving home from her 3rd job at 2 in the morning. She was so exhausted she fell asleep at the wheel. Her daughter, my niece, went into foster care. I never saw her again. Sophia looked up at the tall man with the sad eyes and asked innocently, Do you miss them? The question hit Salvatore like a physical blow. For 30 years he had built walls around that pain, buried it under layers of anger and power and violence. But this 7-year-old girl, with her honest eyes and her birthday cake, had just walked straight through every defense he had, every day. He said softly, every single day. Amy had finished packing the food, but she didn't dare interrupt. The other customers remained frozen, witnessing something they would never forget. The moment when the city's most feared man revealed the broken heart he had been carrying for 3 decades. I can't bring them back, Salvatore continued, looking directly at Elena. But I can make sure you and Sophia don't end up like them. I can make sure you never have to choose between sleeping and working, between feeding your daughter and keeping her safe. Elena shook her head. I don't understand. What do you want from us? Nothing. Salvatore said. I want to give you something. A job, an apartment, a chance for Sophia to go to school and have friends and blow out birthday candles every year, until she's too old to make wishes. The door chimed as a black sedan pulled up outside. Through the window, Elena could see 2 men in expensive suits waiting by the car. Those are my associates, Salvatore explained. They're going to drive us to a building I own downtown. It has apartments, and one of them is empty. It has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and windows that face the sunrise. Sophia would have her own room with a bed and a closet and space for all the books she could ever want. Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, does that mean I could have my own bed? Like the kids on TV, Elena was crying again. But these tears were different. They carried hope and fear and disbelief all tangled together. Why would you do this? You don't even know us. Because, Salvatore said, picking up the cake with surprising gentleness. Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance to do the right thing. And I've been waiting 30 years for mine. But what happened next would reveal that Salvatore's offer came with complications nobody expected. Because helping Elena and Sophia meant bringing them into his world. And his world had enemies who wouldn't hesitate to use a homeless woman and her daughter as weapons against him. As they prepared to leave the bakery, none of them noticed the man in the corner booth who had been pretending to read a newspaper. He folded it carefully, pulled out his phone, and made a call of his own. Boss, he said quietly. Salvatore Costa just picked up some strays, a woman and a kid. Looks like he's getting soft. Thought you should know. The voice on the other end was cold and calculating. Follow them. Find out where he's taking them. If Costa cares about them, they're valuable to us. Elena, holding Sophia's hand as they walked toward the black sedan, had no idea that accepting Salvatore's kindness had just painted a target on both their backs. The sedan's engine purred quietly as they drove through the city streets. But inside the car, tension crackled like electricity. Sophia sat between Elena and Salvatore, clutching her birthday cake box with both hands, as if it might disappear if she let go. Elena stared out the window, watching familiar neighborhoods blur past, each block taking them further from the only world she knew and deeper into something that terrified her. Salvatore made another phone call, his voice sharp and businesslike. Tony, I need you to check the building. Full sweep. Then I want 2 men posted outside. 2 more in the lobby, discreet, but visible. He paused, listening to the response. Because I said so. That's all the reason you need. Elena's stomach dropped. What's happening? Why do you need security? It's just a precaution, Salvatore said, but his eyes were scanning the street behind them through the rearview mirror. In my line of work, you learn to be careful about everything. Sophia looked up at him with innocent curiosity. What kind of work do you do? The question hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Elena held her breath, realizing she was about to learn exactly what kind of man had just become their savior. Salvatore studied the little girl's face. Those honest eyes that hadn't yet learned to fear the world the way her mother's had. I help people solve their problems, he said carefully. Sometimes those problems are complicated. Like fixing broken things. Like a handyman. Sophia asked. Something like that, sweetheart. Elena wasn't fooled by the gentle explanation. She had lived on the streets long enough to recognize danger in all its forms. She knew Salvatore Costa's reputation. Had heard the stories whispered in shelters and soup kitchens. People who crossed him disappeared. Businesses that refused to cooperate burned down. Police officers who investigated too closely found themselves transferred to different cities. But she also knew what desperation felt like. She knew what it meant to watch your daughter grow thinner each day. To see hope fade from her eyes like candles burning out. And despite every instinct screaming at her to run, despite every rational thought telling her this was a mistake, she couldn't bring herself to reject the first real kindness they had received in months. The building they pulled up to was nothing like Elena expected. Instead of some dark, threatening fortress, it was a renovated brick apartment complex with flower boxes in the windows and children's bicycles chained to the front railings. Families walked in and out of the main entrance, carrying groceries and pushing strollers, living normal lives. This is it, Salvatore announced as the car stopped. 3rd floor, apartment 12. It's been empty for 6 months. But I had it cleaned and furnished last week. Elena's confusion deepened. Last week. But you said you'd been watching us for 3 weeks. Salvatore got out of the car and opened Sophia's door, helping her out with the same gentleness he had shown in the bakery. I've been thinking about this for longer than 3 weeks. You'd just gave me the courage to finally do something about it. As they walked toward the building entrance, Elena noticed the 2 men in dark suits standing near the corner. They nodded respectfully at Salvatore, but kept their distance. More security. She realized, whatever world they were entering, it was one where protection was necessary. The lobby was clean and bright with mailboxes lining one wall and a small seating area near the elevator. An elderly woman watering plants near the window smiled at Sophia and complimented her on the cake box she was carrying. It felt surreal. This normalcy existing alongside the undercurrent of danger that followed Salvatore everywhere. They rode the elevator in silence, Sophia pressing her face against the small window to watch the floors pass by. Elena's mind raced with questions and fears. What would happen when other tenants discovered who their new neighbor was? What if Salvatore's enemies found out where they lived? What if this kindness came with a price she couldn't afford to pay? Apartment 12 was more beautiful than anything Elena had imagined. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and walls painted in soft, welcoming colors. The furniture was simple, but comfortable, and Sophia's bedroom was decorated with bookshelves and a small desk, where she could do homework when she started school. The refrigerator is stocked, Salvatore explained, opening the kitchen cabinets to show them plates and glasses and all the basic necessities of home. The utilities are paid for the next year. There's a good elementary school 6 blocks away, and Maria downstairs can help with babysitting if you need to work. Sophia ran from room to room, her excitement bubbling over as she discovered each new wonder. A real bathroom with a bathtub, a kitchen with a window that looked out over a small courtyard, a bedroom with a bed that had clean sheets and pillows that smelled like lavender instead of disinfectant. Elena stood in the middle of the living room, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. I don't understand how to accept this. We don't have anything to give you in return. You're giving me something just by being here, Salvatore said quietly. You're giving me a chance to remember who I used to be before I became the man everyone fears. But even as he spoke those words, his phone buzzed with a text message that made his expression harden. The message was short and threatening. Nice new friends you have, Salvatore. Pretty little girl. Would hate for anything to happen to her. Salvatore's blood went cold. Vincent Torino, his biggest rival, had already learned about Elena and Sophia. The man who had been following them from the bakery worked faster than Salvatore had anticipated. He quickly typed a response to Tony, his head of security. Code red. They found them. Triple the protection. Elena noticed the change in his mood immediately. What's wrong? Salvatore looked at Sophia, who was in her new bedroom, arranging stuffed animals on her bed and singing softly to herself. The joy in her voice was pure and innocent, untainted by knowledge of the darkness that was already reaching toward her. There are some people who won't be happy about my decision to help you, he admitted. People who see kindness as weakness and try to exploit it. The weight of understanding settled on Elena's shoulders like a lead blanket. By accepting Salvatore's help, by bringing Sophia into this apartment, she had unknowingly made her daughter a target. The very thing she had been trying to protect Sophia from by living on the streets, staying invisible. Keeping their heads down had found them anyway. We can go back to the shelter, she said immediately. We can disappear again. No. Salvatore's voice carried absolute authority. Running won't solve this now. They know who you are. They know Sophia's face. The only way to keep you safe is to keep you close. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. What have we done? What have I done to her? Sophia appeared in the doorway, still clutching one of the stuffed animals she had found on her bed. Mom, why are you crying? Don't you like our new house? Elena knelt down and pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, breathing in the scent of her hair and trying to memorize the feeling of holding her safe and close, because deep down she knew their lives had just become infinitely more complicated and dangerous. Salvatore watched them, his own heart breaking for the second time that day. He had wanted to save them, to give them the life his sister and niece never got to have. Instead, he had painted targets on their backs and dragged them into a war they didn't understand. But there was no going back now. Vincent Torino had made his move, and Salvatore would have to respond. The only question was whether he could protect Elena and Sophia while fighting a battle that had been brewing for years. As evening shadows began to stretch across the apartment floor, none of them knew that 3 blocks away, Vincent Torino was already planning his next move. and his plan involved more than just threatening messages. It involved taking everything Salvatore cared about and using it to destroy him completely. Vincent Torino was not a patient man. While Salvatore sat in the apartment with Elena and Sofia, Vincent was 3 blocks away in the back room of his restaurant, studying surveillance photos spread across a mahogany table. Like playing cards in a deadly game, his fingers drummed against the wood as he examined each image. Elena walking Sofia to the park, Sofia reading at the library, Salvatore kneeling beside the little girl in the bakery. 30 years, Vincent muttered to his lieutenant, Marco Benedetti. 30 years I've been trying to find Salvatore's weakness. And it walks into a bakery asking for expired cake. Marco shifted uncomfortably. He had worked for Vincent long enough to recognize that tone. The way his boss's voice turned soft and dangerous when he was planning something particularly cruel. What's the play, boss? Vincent picked up the photo of Sofia holding her cake box, her face glowing with innocent joy. Salvatore thinks he's protecting them by keeping them close. But proximity works both ways. The closer they are to him, the easier they are for us to reach. Back at the apartment, Salvatore was teaching Sofia how to light the candles on her birthday cake properly, his massive hands guiding her small fingers as she struck each match. Elena watched from the kitchen doorway, her heart torn between gratitude and terror. This man who had shown them such unexpected kindness was the same person whose enemies now wanted to use her daughter as a weapon. Make a wish, sweetheart, Salvatore said softly as all 8 candles flickered to life. Sofia closed her eyes tight, her face scrunched in concentration. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Salvatore. I wish that you wouldn't be sad anymore about your sister and your niece. The words hit Salvatore like a physical blow. He had been carrying that grief for 3 decades, had built an empire on the foundation of that pain, and this 7-year-old girl, with her honest heart, had just offered to take it away with a birthday wish. Elena saw the tears gathering in his eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't the calculating monster she had expected. This was a broken man trying to heal wounds that had never properly closed. Thank you, Sofia, Salvatore whispered. That's the most beautiful wish anyone has ever made. But their moment of peace was shattered by the sound of Salvatore's phone ringing. He glanced at the caller ID, and his entire demeanor changed, shoulders tensing, jaw hardening. I have to take this. He stepped into the hallway, closing the apartment door behind him. Elena pressed her ear against the wood, straining to hear fragments of conversation. What do you mean they're gone? Salvatore's voice was sharp with anger. How do 2 men just disappear from their post? Elena's blood turned to ice. The security guards outside the building, the ones who were supposed to protect them, had vanished. Find them, Salvatore continued, and get a full team here now. Vincent's making his move. Elena pulled away from the door, her mind racing. She looked at Sofia, who was carefully cutting her cake into perfect triangles, completely unaware that danger was closing in around them like a noose. Sofia, Elena said, forcing her voice to remain calm. We need to play a game, remember? How we used to practice being very quiet when we lived at the shelter. Sofia looked up, cake frosting on her chin. Are we playing hide and seek? Something like that. Baby, I need you to go to your room and get under the bed. Stay there until mommy comes to get you. Okay, no matter what you hear. Sofia's face fell. But what about my cake? We'll save it for later. I promise. Salvatore burst back through the door just as Elena was helping Sofia into her bedroom. His face was grim, and he was speaking rapidly into his phone, while simultaneously checking the locks on the windows. Tony, where's my backup? They should have been here 10 minutes ago. He paused, listening to the response. What do you mean? The building's surrounded. By who? Elena felt her knees go weak. They were trapped. Salvatore ended the call and turned to face her, his expression mixing apology with determination. Elena, I need you to listen carefully. Vincent Torino has people positioned around this building. My security team is either dead or compromised. We're on our own until reinforcements arrive. How long? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Elena thought about Sofia hiding under the bed in her new bedroom, about the birthday cake sitting abandoned on the kitchen table, about how quickly their miracle had turned into a nightmare. There's something else, Salvatore said quietly. Vincent doesn't just want to hurt you to get to me. He wants to take Sofia. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Elena felt something primal and fierce rise up inside her chest. Something that had been dormant during months of quiet desperation but was now roaring to life over my dead body, she said. And Salvatore saw something in her eyes that reminded him why he had survived 30 years in a Business where most men didn't last 5. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say, he replied, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small pistol. Because we're going to have to fight for her. Elena stared at the weapon. She had never held a gun in her life, had never imagined herself capable of violence. But as she thought about Vincent Torino's hands reaching for her daughter, about Sophia's innocent trust and birthday wishes, she discovered reserves of strength she didn't know existed. Show me how to use it, she said. 3 floors below, Vincent's. Men were already moving through the building, using stolen keys to access the service elevators and emergency stairwells. They moved like shadows, trained professionals who specialized in making problems disappear quietly. Vincent himself waited in his car across the street, watching the apartment windows through binoculars. He had planned this operation meticulously, accounting for every variable except one. He had underestimated what a mother would do to protect her child. Inside the apartment, Salvatore was giving Elena a crash course in handling firearms, while simultaneously barricading the front door with furniture. Keep both hands on the grip. Sight down the barrel. Squeeze. Don't pull the trigger. And Elena, if it comes down to choosing between your life and Sophia's safety, you choose Sophia every time. Elena nodded, surprised by how natural the weight of the gun felt in her hands. What about you? I've been preparing for this fight my whole life. Vincent thinks he's hunting a helpless woman and child. He's about to learn he's walked into a trap. The elevator dinged softly in the hallway outside their door. Salvatore held up his hand for silence, then moved to the window and peered through the blinds. From men in the hallway to more visible on the fire escape outside. They're here, he whispered. Elena crept towards Sophia's bedroom, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone in the building could hear it. She found her daughter exactly where she had left her, curled up under the bed with her stuffed animal, eyes wide but obedient. Stay here no matter what happens, Elena whispered. If strangers come in, you don't make a sound. Can you do that? For mommy, Sophia nodded solemnly. Elena kissed her forehead and returned to the living room just as the first soft knock came at the door. It was polite, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying than if they had simply tried to break it down. Mr. Costa, a voice called through the door. We just want to talk. Salvatore looked at Elena and mouthed the words, Vincent's voice. The gunfire lasted exactly 17 minutes. When the smoke cleared and the sirens finally faded into the distance, 3 lives had been forever altered by a single moment of unexpected kindness in a small bakery. Vincent Torino would never threaten another family. Salvatore Costa discovered that redemption was possible even for men like him. And Elena learned that sometimes the most dangerous people in the world can also be the most protective. Sophia still has that birthday cake every year, though now it sits on a kitchen table in a house where laughter echoes through every room, and where a man who once ruled through fear learned to love through healing. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes in life.